Thank you so much, Don, for joining us. I'm so excited to talk with you. Can you take a second to just introduce yourself and give us your typical elevator speech?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Don McGuire. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Qualcomm. Very excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me, and excited to talk about my favorite topic, but from a little bit of a different perspective, which is kind of AI, but the human side of it. So that's a new angle, which I'm excited about. And I just spend my days trying to build brand and drive business value for the rest of the 45,000 employees here at Qualcomm.
Which brings me to actually one of the questions that occurs to me is what's your philosophy when it comes to building brand?
I've always believed that brand value can drive business value. So we focus on everything that we do needs to be attached to a business objective. And that marketing objectives have to be tied to business objectives. So I'm not one of those CMOs who just kind of does marketing for marketing's sake. It really has to be tied to driving the business. And so we align strategically all of our marketing objectives to driving business objectives that move the totality of the business forward. And I'm a strong believer that the more you can invest in building that brand advocacy, that affinity, that you can drive business value. And it shows up in very tangible KPIs. It shows up in ASP lift. It shows up in margin lift. It shows up in loyalty. And it shows up in growth. And so that's kind of where we focus on, the art and the science of building brand.
What's personally your favorite part of marketing? What's that hook for you?
Well, I love the creative process. I kind of more of a classically trained marketer, but I've been in tech marketing my entire career, which, is a little bit different. I didn't come from the CPG world and didn't have that sort of training, sort of brand management training, traditional brand management training. So being a marketer in tech is really more rooted in understanding product knowledge, because obviously technology is a little bit more complex, and the value propositions go a little bit deeper, and they require a distillation of concepts that have to be translated, and oftentimes, especially for the audience that you're speaking with. So I really love the creative process. I love taking a value proposition or a concept that is, technical in nature, or the root of what you're delivering to the marketplace comes with a lot of technology attached to it, but then distilling that down and bringing that to life, whether it's from an experiential perspective or from some sort of passion point for the audience that you're eventually trying to sell to. And to me, that is a layer of the creative process that is different than, selling toothpaste. That's kind of the part I really love about my job is that whole journey of developing the creative execution and the creative expression of our products and our technologies. And for Qualcomm, it's even challenged a little bit more is that, when it comes to the Snapdragon platforms, which is more of our consumer brand, we are, traditionally kind of what's known as an ingredient brand, right? So we are the technology on the inside that's powering your experiences on the outside. And so that creates another layer of storytelling. It also creates another layer of challenge, but it also creates opportunity. So I get to work with some amazing brand partners to joint storytell, to help tell my story, but also to lend credit, especially technology credit, to their story through the Snapdragon platform that is powering whatever device they might be bringing to market.
Step back a little bit and talk about, your passion about the creative process. Where in your life did you say, okay, creativity, problem solving, all of this? When did you decide, okay, this is the path that I'm on?
That's an interesting question, because there were a couple different things in my life that led me down this path. One was when I was a little kid. I used to go to the grocery store with my mom, and I would love walking down the aisles and seeing product on shelves and seeing messages that were either on sort of clings that stuck to shelving or products, or banners that were on end caps, or stickies that were on the floor of the aisle. And I loved merchandising. I loved the way that brands were trying to engage with their customer as that customer sort of wheeled that cart down the aisle. And it always intrigued me. And to this day, I love going to the grocery store, which is really, really great because my wife hates going to the grocery store. So I really enjoy it. It's not just about throwing product in a cart and then getting out as soon as possible. I literally love like walking down the aisles. A second kind of inflection point was I was in college. I, like many of my generation, entered college under the distinguished major of undeclared. And then I kind of found my path. But one of the things that really led me towards down a marketing path from an education standpoint and a vocational standpoint was my consumer behavior class. And I took this consumer behavior class as part of one of my first business marketing classes. And I really fell in love with this idea and the psychological side and the emotional side of how to build, brand affinity and loyalty, and how consumers react and respond to different stimulus, different messages, different stories, different visual cues. I really, really liked that. And, I had a great professor as well, and that's half the battle. He was interesting and engaging. And that was another inflection point where I knew I really like the science and the psychology of marketing was something that I was super interested in. So there's this natural tendency to like want to look at stuff as you're in environments that caught my eye. And I think just putting these things together sort of created this natural pathway, or this organic pathway for me to really dive in and strive to get to a marketing path within sort of the business world, because it's not easy to start there. At least it wasn't when I graduated from college. There was not a lot of entry-level marketing jobs, quote unquote. It was more about you got to start out in sales and then maybe make your way into marketing and things like that. So that's kind of what got me, jazzed and excited about plotting my path, and then becoming this multidisciplinarian, right, type of marketer, which I also think has served me well to eventually lead to having the opportunity to be a CMO.
Are you seeing any of those dots being connected between what you're doing now and also, touching a little bit on AI and that little kid in the grocery aisle?
I am. Some of it's evolutionary, and I think some of it's revolutionary. Evolutionary, I think, it's a new way to engage, right? It can be a tool that can provide brands a new way to engage with their audience. And from a revolutionary perspective, it's very neural in nature. And so it's almost like anticipatory and suggestive in a way that traditional marketing methods in the past really haven't been. They've been either discoverable, right, and or maybe static. And with AI, it's more suggestive, anticipatory, and fluid.
Can you give an example of what you mean, Don?
I'll use the shopping aisle as as another example.
Please. Yeah, I love this.
So, traditionally you walk down a shopping aisle and you see static messages or static visuals, and they could be attached to a shelf, attached to a product. They could be the label on a can or a box, or they could be something on the floor that's like leading you to a destination, or they could be something on your shopping cart. But those assets are historically static. And, I think in the past, brands have explored with little video screens, sometimes and end caps and things that, run in a loop and, present video content. That's kind of the history in the past. With AI, I think what's coming is through devices like your smartphone and through things that have geolocation in them and understand presence, where you're at physically, geographically, what you may be looking at. I think that allows brands, and that allows for a a discovery journey to be much more active than passive, much more precise, because it can be driven on behaviors, it could be driven on patterns, and it can be driven environmentally. And I think all those things together create the opportunity to actually serve something up that's more relevant, right, to you at the time. If I spend 5 minutes contemplating cereal in the cereal aisle, do I get corn checks, rice checks, wheat checks, right? Honey nut corn checks. I don't know. Oh my gosh, the decision. And AI can basically help in that process to decide and or figure out sort of where I'm best positioned to go. I think that is sort of this next revolutionary piece of matching consumer behavior, matching needs, matching behaviors and emotion to product, or to discovering and fully vetting a value proposition to see if it attaches to who you are or what you're doing or what you may want. Because delivering wants and needs is kind of what it's all about historically, right?
This experience that you're describing is like the next step of an experience that I think a lot of people are having right now with their phones. When you're having a conversation with a friend about wanting to buy a couch, and then all of a sudden you're looking at your Instagram or your Facebook feed and there's a Joybird commercial. There is almost an eerie quality to that where I think that people are starting to get used to it in a way. And in a lot of cases, man, as a consumer, thank you. Well timed, because I really do want to look at couches, right? What do you think about that? I mean, what in terms of the consumer experience, where it is right now versus where it could be with AI?
I think it has to become less random, to your point. I think because the randomness drives the creepiness, I think, a little bit. Like, oh my gosh, I was talking about,
Feels like coincidental, yeah.
yeah, it's coincidental. Or I was talking about, a new dog collar for my dog, but it was out of context, right? I wasn't thinking about buying one. I was thinking about, oh, maybe, I need to wash, or maybe I need to resize my dog's collar. And then all of a sudden I'm getting ads for dog collars, right? And it's like, that's out of context. So I think less random and more contextual, which is where AI can actually come in, then creates relevance and timing, to your point about, oh my gosh, yes, my mind, I'm actually in my brain, I'm taking up space right now considering and pondering sofa purchases. And so to have AI and other technologies serve up to me options and choices and places I can go to complete that thought or to move that thought forward is super helpful. And so I think once contextualness is there and relevancy and timing and those things come together, people will be less afraid of it and actually view it as helpful. One of the promises of AI is assistance, right? Assistance with a lot of different things. So if you view it as assistance, I think that kind of lowers people's guards down, and they don't view it as creepy or intrusive, or like, I don't want to hear about couches right now. My mind's in another place. Yeah, I might have mentioned the word or said the word, but that's not really what I was thinking. So I think AI, which commonly is referred as artificial intelligence, I really view it as augmented intelligence, is your sixth sense. It is your second brain. It is that something that could help you, continue that journey or complete that thought, or, in the case of marketing, make that purchase, maybe in a more educated, more fluid, more timely, fashion. And all those things can be positive. Again, if it's all put together in the right package. It's all about recipe, right? The best recipes executed well create amazing and delicious food. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here, is just that recipe for success in driving you towards whatever that journey is. And I think that's exciting. And it's beyond the phone, right? Because I don't know if you've used the Meta Ray-Bans, but I have a pair, and Meta just added Meta AI to the Meta Ray-Bans. And I just downloaded the update, and I was walking around with my glasses on, and I was just speaking to my glasses and saying, what am I looking at? and it would tell me what I'm looking at. It will tell me information about what I'm looking at. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And imagine when visuals come into play there, right? So instead of just audio cues, like you're looking at the Mona Lisa, and the Mona Lisa was painted by, Leonardo da Vinci, and this blah, 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 information, education. But imagine when visuals can pop up in that field of view, and you have an augmented visual experience, which is coming, right, to these glasses, where information can pop up, and as far as oh, well, they're about to put it in the basement, so you better go see it, soon, and here's the schedule of when it's available, and all these other things now make it a multi-dimensional, multi-spatial experience for you. That's super exciting. It's Minority Report, but it's not far away. And I think some people are like, oh, but is that really kind of coming soon? It's actually coming soon. And so that's pretty cool. Now, again, there's lots of people there's a lot of fear, and everything needs governance, right? And everything needs to be defined from a kind of a playing field perspective of kind of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. I'm not overly in favor of overregulation, because I don't believe regulators understand technology well enough to then regulate effectively, especially at the pace this is all moving. By the time any sort of regulatory body can actually come up with any sort of regulation, the technology has moved on. And so it's almost out of date. But what I am in favor of is standards, principles, governance, and much like how Reddit has a governance model, right? The community governs Reddit. And so maybe that's a model that could work with regards to some AI applications. But in general, best practices, standards, and governance will create a positive, ultimately, experience when it comes to utilizing AI tools to enhance whatever it is for the end user, whether it's enhancing their educational experience, enhancing their purchase journey, right? Enhancing their entertainment experience, whatever that might be. If there are proper standards and governance in place, it will, for the most part, in a majority of instances, be something that is truly helpful and additive to, whoever's experience.
You started down a path that I want to go with you on, which is talking about AI as an assistant. We were talking about the consumer experience of AI. Let's go ahead into the business itself and talk a little bit more about where AI comes in with your team at Qualcomm, how you're approaching bringing it into the organization cross-functionally. But first, I want you to tell me the story of the first time that you used generative AI in your work or saw your team experiencing generative AI.
So my first experience with AI in general probably was in my smartphone. Because of who I work for, I understood that it was actually AI that was actually doing what it was doing. Most people don't understand AI has been working in the background in your devices for years, right? It's been making your photos better. It's been making your music sound better. It's been actually adding very, very cool and positive, outputs to your experiences, whether it's gaming, photography, music, et cetera, especially through a device like your smartphone. But it's been in the background, and it hasn't been positioned as AI is doing this. It's been positioned as a new photo editor, or it's been positioned as noise cancellation or some sort of, audio technology. But AI is kind of that thread that's been enabling some of these things to happen. Enter the advent of generative AI, which really has been the press release for AI and created this broad recognition of the term that, we've all gotten used to, who those of us who are in the business of commercializing, researching, and developing the technology. And so that all of a sudden thrusted AI into the zeitgeist, right? It thrusted it into society with the advent of ChatGPT. And so this idea of prompting and getting a response back that is trained using, data from a multitude of sources was pretty cool. It started out, like many things do, as this novel thing that it was new and interesting for people. And so, they went and ChatGPT'd away. And then, of course, what you find when you battle test any new technology at scale, you discover the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's all kind of made its way through. And we're seeing that, and it's manifested itself in, delivering bad data, bad responses, misinformation, wrong information. And then it comes back to how are things being trained. And then there's like all the IP protection issues and all that kind of stuff. When the news broke about ChatGPT, of course, I downloaded it and I started asking it questions. So I asked it, about me, first of all, and I just said, who am I? And the answers that I got back were super hilarious, right? It said I lived from like 1905 to 1940. And I think it had me as like, I was a professor of aeronautics, and it was very interesting, to say the least. The life that maybe it was one of my other lives. So obviously it was funny and it was novel. And it also was very clear to me that, okay, this has a long way to go. And so that was my first consumer experience, personal experience with generative AI. I was doing what 100 million of us other people did, which is download the app and start playing with it and start prompting. But then as OpenAI and other large language models sort of came to fruition, and then the app ecosystem started to develop and tools started to pop up, that's when I started looking at this from a business context and how these tools could enhance a business process or enhance a way of working, so to speak. And so fast forward to where we are today with tools like Writer and others. And, we have seriously been looking at these types of tools to do one of a multitude of things for both my team as well as for Qualcomm as a whole. And so it's pretty exciting to see what's available today, but also what's coming tomorrow, and what we're able to do with it. I think because of who we are and the company I work for, and the fact that we've been researching, commercializing, and AI technology for 10 years, the fear factor really wasn't there to begin with. And so we've been sort of a rabbit. We've been early adopters of generative AI tools from an enterprise and from a business perspective. And we kind of moved into the space fast and furiously. And the first thing we did was we developed a adoption model and a governance model that protected us first and foremost, and provided a vetting process for AI tools, so that what came out on the other side of it, we checked all the boxes with regards to governance and cyber safety, right, and productivity and effectiveness and things like that. So that's kind of from the first experience with ChatGPT to deployment of tools like Writer, kind of where I've been probably over the past like 24 months.
Once you had that governance structure around things, talk to me a little bit about some of the experiments that happened and discoveries that were made while you were exploring that.
We wanted to look at various tools and plug them into workflows pretty fast. And so the first thing we did is we worked with our stakeholder partners in legal, IT, and really across the business to create a process to vet properly these tools and to answer all the questions that these stakeholder groups would naturally have about these tools. And once we sort of were able to then check all the boxes and answer all those questions and deem that tool sort of enterprise ready and ready to be deployed, then we started sort of playing with and or initial deployments, and we sort of plugged these tools in where we thought that naturally they would make the most sense. So for example, if you're talking about something that's helping you in the creative process of developing and constructing the written word, so to speak, or copy development in any form, we went there first, right? More naturally, what team, what workflow, what type of person could best benefit from these tools, and whether it's something that was more aligned with copy development, or whether it's something more aligned with visual asset development. And we would place those tools appropriately, and then we would just encourage people to start playing with them. And then we obviously brought in training from both the company that makes the tool, as well as on the appropriate ways to use the tool within the context of our business practices and our governance model. And then we sort of unleashed the tool to the world, and we've seen adoption curves sort of rise both sequentially and scale based on the effectiveness and the usability of said tool. So where we've seen scalable adoption in things like Writer, it's because A, the tool is relevant to a lot of people and a lot of functions and a lot of workflows and a lot of processes. And B, it's enterprise grade. The user experience is easy and fast. The Chrome plugin makes it, more universally adoptable and usable. And so it's really kind of a combination of how ready is the tool to be used by a multitude of people, and then how easy it is for that person to adopt it.
And that was bringing me to my other question, which is anecdotally, and this isn't about writers specifically. This is just about the experience of using generative AI in business processes. What are the kind of responses you're getting from folks? Where are the pain points that they're seeing?
So we're seeing everything from super users to laggards. And the laggards are mostly driven by fear and just trying to figure out how to learn a new skill set or how to incorporate the tool into their workflow. And so some people are struggling with that still. And then we've got people who grabbed it, vetted it, battle tested it, and now they're super users. And they use it literally every day in what they do. And it has been a game changer for them. And we can talk about, the output that these tools are not only generating from a work product perspective, but the broader impact of these tools on how people work, what types of tasks they can achieve faster, which then enables them to explore different sides of their work life, whether it's becoming a better critical thinker, whether it's taking on, more complex tasks or more complex workflows because they've been able to more efficiently take things off of their plate that were taking up a lot of time. Time is the one thing that people you can't buy more of. So it's one of the most precious commodities, right, in our lives. So anything that can help us utilize better and theoretically buy more time, I think is super beneficial to people. And so with the people who've adopted and embraced and are using are starting to see that ancillary benefit of time. And then we've got people who are still afraid, probably need some extra hand holding, need some sort of hands-on training to get more comfortable, and then eventually they'll get there and they'll start utilizing these tools and they'll start seeing those benefits as well. So that's kind of where we are right now. We got the spectrum of users and non-users, but I will say that, with every day that goes by and every week that goes by, and the advocacy that's starting to build amongst the super user community, we're starting to pull the rest of the organization along. There's the FOMO factor that you can't ignore, where that's starting to drive more and more adoption of some of these things. The world is moving so fast, right? People used to say, "Oh, it's a 24-hour news cycle." It's a 2-hour news cycle. That's where we are today. And when the world is moving at the pace of TikTok, keeping up with engaging your audience with relevant, new, timely content, whether it's written, whether it's visual, whatever it might be, is a daunting task. And I don't know about other CMOs, but I'm never going to get an operating model or be able to work within an operating model that gives me the human resources that can keep up with that cadence in a timely fashion. I mean, I couldn't hire enough people probably in a timely fashion to actually keep up with this pace. These tools are going to enable us to start to move at this speed, at this pace of the TikTok generation. And so I'm excited about that because augmenting, right, the work that we do every day and the work processes and workflows in a way that improves efficiency and productivity and output, but also in a way frees people up to do more, to do different things, is sort of the best of both worlds. We're getting more out of what we put in, but we're also freeing up people's time to do other things. And so you can go both vertically, and you can go deeper, and you can improve the volume, but you can also improve the breadth. And that's what I really like about this, and this kind of phenomenon that we're on the doorstep of is this depth and this breadth sort of matrix that you can build by bringing in some of these tools and putting them to use within, your teams.
I want to first of all ask you if there's anything I should have asked you that I didn't.
I'm excited to be a CMO at this time. I know we have a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of challenges facing CMOs, and the world is a crazy place right now for a lot of reasons. But the exciting part about what generative AI is going to enable, and it's not just in marketing, it's across various disciplines and different functions. It's across your business life and your personal life, is next level. And we're only at the beginning of this journey. Going to be much more to come, but it is moving very fast. So it's almost like, the train's left the station, and before it starts getting up to speed, you better jump on, right? Because once it starts operating at full speed, it's going to be really hard to catch it. And so that would be kind of my advice, and just my thinking to people is like, just jump on the train and kind of figure it out as you go, and then have really deep and honest conversations with your teams and your key stakeholder groups across your family, your school, your enterprise, whatever the case and the application might be, to make sure that what you're doing is deliberate. It's going to get you the desired results that you want, and it's going to be doing it in a kind of a governed and safe way. If people follow those basic, sort of concepts, they'll start seeing the benefits that we're already starting to see, and we'll be able to kind of maybe solve some big problems.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Don. Do you have time for 3 quick rapid fire questions before we head off?
Sure.
Okay, amazing. So, question number 1. You already kind of answered this, but the first time you used generative AI was?
Asking ChatGPT who I was.
Okay, great. Your favorite AI use at the moment? AI use case.
Copilot Teams meeting summary.
Okay, cool. And your dream AI capability?
Dream AI capability is true assistance that will proactively plan my day for me, serve up information that is relevant to things that I need to do, and help me kind of eliminate mundane tasks out of my life so I could focus on more important things.
That does sound like the dream. Thank you so much.